Hello everybody and welcome back to the Ant Pod. This is now episode 5 and today we are talking all Myrmecia. Today we have two YouTubers on the show and the first YouTuber is Novo. Now, Novo is a YouTuber with over 2,500 subscribers and is from Australia. Say hello, Novo.
G'day everyone, how are we all going?
We are doing amazingly. It's amazing to have you on the show. I've been following you for quite some time. I do remember seeing your 500 subscriber special. So yeah, I've been with you for a while at least. It's nice having you here on the show. So with Novo Ants, we also have Aussie Ants, and he's of course also from Australia. And well, his YouTube channel is really not live anymore. So we're gonna chat about that in a second. But yeah, say hello, Aussie Ants.
Hello. How are we all?
We are brilliant. It's nice to have both of you on your show, and well, you are both keepers of Myrmecia, so I thought you would be the perfect people to interview for, well, the species Myrmecia. So we're gonna be starting the podcast with a little bit of introduction to you two before we go into the more Myrmecia questions. So yeah, let's learn a little bit about you two. So Novo, why and when did you start your YouTube channel and your other social media accounts?
Okay, yeah, I started my YouTube channel about 3 years ago. Actually, it's just come up to 3 years ago. I only started it as an experiment just to work out how YouTube sort of functioned. I was looking for something to put up on YouTube, and yeah, I just had a acrylic nest that I just received. So I thought, oh, why not? I'll just do a little video on that, see what it's like, and upload that, and see if anybody's interested in looking at it. And yeah, I got a bit of response out of it. So I decided, oh, well, I might as well make a channel on ant keeping, even though I was very new to it at the time. So yeah, that's sort of how I started with the YouTube channel. And then as that sort of started to get a few subscribers, I thought I better start some of the other social media things to go along with it as well. So mainly Instagram. I only joined Facebook then as well. I hadn't really been on it before and didn't know how it worked. So yeah, I'm an old fella, so it takes me a little bit of time to get on these social media things.
Yeah, and a quick pop-in question. We just chatted a little bit before we started the show, and you're actually quite a lot older than I personally expected. How old are you?
Yeah, I'm 41. Yep.
Yeah, did not expect that at all. But together with Novo, we also have Aussie Ants. And well, how did you start your YouTube channel and your other social media accounts?
Well, basically with the YouTube channel, it was pretty much just a lot of, audience, what do you call it? Just people wanting me to make content, because I was always on Instagram. That's where I started. And there are a lot of people that, because it's only photography content, it's all static images, there are a lot of people that wanted me to make some sort of videos just to better document the colonies and their progression. So I pretty much just started it based off of, people that followed me on Instagram wanting me to do it. And the Instagram, I don't really remember how I started. It was quite a while ago, but I think it was just after watching other people on YouTube and whatnot raising their colonies. I thought, may as well get on it and start posting some photos of things I keep, engage with some people. It's a good way to meet people in the community and whatnot. So yeah, it's pretty much the reason. Not anything crazy, just hopped into it, I guess.
Yeah, well, we all start, most of all just start for fun, but opposite Novo Ants, you are quite a lot younger than I personally expected. How old are you?
Yeah, I'm 19. So I started
19.
when I was probably 16, I'd say, maybe, was when I first started, if I had to guess. Don't really remember, it was quite a while back now, but at least for me, only a few years, but it feels like a long time.
Yeah, looking back at it, I don't. It's fun hearing that I've been in ant keeping since 2018. I feel like I'm still just starting out, but that's the amazing thing about ant keeping. Keep getting to learn more species. If you're 19 today and you've been keeping ants since you were 15, 16 years old, how many colonies do you have today?
Well, that's a good question. I've got quite a few. Probably haven't really counted, to be honest. I showed you an image before, so you would know that, there's a lot there. But
that was quite a few.
Yeah. Look, I only just started in, I think, August 2020, I'm pretty sure. So, I've only been keeping again for a year. But before that, I think I've probably gone over the old amount of colonies I had. I think I've got a lot more than I used to have back in the day, which is not what I planned. I planned when I got back into it just to keep a couple of colonies and keep it simple. And, you can't do that. Blew up, and now I've got what I've got. Too many.
Yeah, I think you have more than 50 without
yeah.
counting the picture you sent. But quite a lot of colonies at least.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing about ants. You just keep getting more.
Exactly. You can't stop. It's an addiction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bad addition, money wise.
Oh, yeah.
But Novo, how many ant colonies do you currently keep?
Yeah, I haven't actually kept count of it either, but yeah, nowhere near that many. I've started to cull it back and get rid of a few of them, just because there's too many to look after, especially as they start to grow and get bigger and bigger. There's a lot more cleaning out and a lot more feeding. So I've probably got about 15 to 20 colonies, and then I've probably got another half a dozen just queens by themselves, just ready to start a colony. So yeah, probably around about that 15ish.
Yeah, but that is still a good amount. I think I have around the same 15 colonies that are considered real colonies, and I already now have to really get myself into the mood of feeding them, because it just takes quite a time to sit and chop up mealworms and whatnot. At least, it takes more time than you think.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's one of those things. You've just got to find the extra little bit of time and grab 5 minutes here, and that's what I'll sort of do, is break up my feeding. So I'll be like, all right, 2 colonies, you're getting it this hour. I'll feed you, and then I'll go and do something else. Go and play with the kids, and then come back and do another couple.
That sounds like a whole system.
I don't know if it's just because I've got so many, but I find it easier personally to, if I'm feeding them, I've got to do them all at the same time. Other than Myrmecia, because Myrmecia, they are very specific on what they, the amount that they eat. But for all my smaller species that are in nests and stuff, I pick a day, and I sit there and I slice up a whole box of crickets, and I just dish them out to everyone, and gets it done way quicker for me.
It's the same for me. I sit down and then I just sit and just make every dish, because then it's all over, and then I don't have to think about that before I have to take it out again. But is there anything special that you two have been up to lately, starting with Novo?
I'm working on a couple of little projects. One's been a long time coming, and I'm still not going much further with it, not as fast as I'd like to, but it's a bit more of a documentary style, actually on ants, and a bit more of a deep dive into them. So that one,
nice,
coming, but yeah, it's taken, I don't know, you go down a bit of a rabbit hole, and then you're like, how far do I want to go with this episode? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to break this up into multiple parts now, but it's fun because I'm learning along the way. So yeah, that's a little side project. But then I've got a few sort of immediate projects, and a lot of them are around just building bigger outworlds and nests for a couple of the colonies. So I've got a Myrmecia colony that I've got. I haven't showed it off on my channel yet, so I'm about to show that one off in probably the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to give them a nice new outworld, new nest. But then that means I'm upgrading some of the other guys as well. So I've got a 2-foot fish tank there ready to go. So yeah, a few little projects like that. And then I'm also working on developing a founding nest made of plaster, and just having a bit of a tinker with that, just to see what I can work out what's best. I find it hard to find really small, just founding cells or nests out there. So just looking at something just for myself, really, just see what I come up with.
Yeah, you both of you have made quite a lot of DIY projects, which I find perfect, because, well, DIY projects are brilliant. But Aussie ants, anything special you've been up to lately? I know you've been quite busy on Instagram, and you have also had a few TikToks that have blown quite a lot up. But anything special?
Other than that, I don't think so. Really, the Instagram, same thing. I just like to take pictures of all my colonies, even just for a personal record. Looking back eventually, see what things I've had and how fast they grow. It's good to know for future reference. But yeah, like you said, TikTok's probably the only thing that I've really been doing that's special recently. It's didn't expect it to get what it was, that first one on the giant bull ants that blew up with 6 million views on TikTok now. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, it just sort of happened out of nowhere, and I just kept posting a few more, see if I could run with it, get a few more, and had another one that's got 1.8 million now. So yeah, it seems like there's a lot of people that are interested in ants, or at least just shocked by the size that they can get to, because a lot of people must not know that there's ants that big in the world. Because when you think of ants, you just think of the little tiny black ones that run around and get on your food, really. So, but yeah, that's probably the only thing, like I said, that anything special I've been working on. Other than that, just been getting more and more queens, building the collection.
But I think we must address a question. Your YouTube channel, now you chatted a little bit about it before, why you started it, but I tried to find it the other day, and I think you have deleted all your videos or just hidden them away. Can you just share a little bit just before we start the Myrmecia part of the podcast? What happened?
Yeah, so I didn't delete them. They're all still there. They're just unlisted, so only people I send a link to can view it, or obviously I can view them. The only reason why I got rid of all the videos is just because, like I said before to a few other people, is that they were just low effort. Like, I recorded it, wrote the script, edited the video, did the voiceover, everything, like a couple hours in an afternoon, and just threw it out there. So it's not really anything that, I was proud of. It was just content out there, like I said, that people wanted me to make. So I was just, fulfilling what people wanted. And yeah, they sat there, they got a few views over time, and eventually I was like, time to move on and get rid of them. And if I ever go back to YouTube, which I don't think I will, because like I said, I never really enjoyed making them. It was more so just doing what the people wanted, I guess. But yeah, if I ever do go back, it'll definitely be something that I actually put effort into this time.
Yeah, and I must say, I really respect that you have decided to just take them down. I think yeah, that's quite impressive. I'm not sure. I haven't taken my old videos down because I don't know. I find it quite impressive if you have taken this step and done it. Now, in the other podcast we have done so far, in the other ant pods, the viewer questions have been kind of in the start or in the end of the podcast, and this time I'm just going to throw them in as we go along. And just one last question before we go into the Myrmecia part. I'm personally from Denmark, and we don't really have any dangerous animals at all, and I mean nothing at all. I think that the most dangerous thing we have in Denmark is a tick, so that isn't really too bad. But we have a question over from Instagram from Stan Ingman, who asks, what is the worst animal injury you have got, or do you have any?
Personally, I don't know. I haven't really had any bad animal injury. Yeah, the worst one probably would just be, let's just go with something with ants. I've been stung by 4 of my Myrmecia nigricincta at the same time, and that didn't feel very nice. They've, with the few big colonies I've been raising, every time I have to move them into a new nest, they always get me. Like, there's no avoiding them because of how easily they can just jump onto you. Those things are sneaky little buggers.
What about you, Novo?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I've managed to avoid getting injured by any of the Australian wildlife. I'm actually originally from New Zealand. So I'm born in New Zealand and moved over here when I was 10. And I was petrified to come to Australia because of all the stories I was told. There's spiders and snakes everywhere. And when we first came over here, I went to North Queensland, and we lived in a rural property out there, so had plenty of snake encounters. But yeah, thankfully I never got bitten by one. But yeah, just up there you couldn't swim in the rivers for the crocodiles, couldn't swim in the ocean for the box jellyfish. So yeah, it was great place. So yeah, but yeah, actually, probably recently, my worst thing apart from a bee sting would probably be getting stung by a bull ant, which is the first time I've ever been stung. Was only a couple of weeks ago.
How bad was it then?
It actually wasn't too bad. It was Myrmecia piliventris, so only a fairly small one. And yeah, very sneaky little thing. Was just on the inside lid on the outworld. When I lifted it up just to do some cleaning and feeding, I didn't realise it was there, and yeah, just crawled onto my hand and yeah, got me good. But it was just a sort of a sharp little pain. But there was a lump there for over a day. Yeah, but it was all right.
Well, either way, I'm glad none of you have gotten any serious harm. I think I'm a little bit on the same team as Novo, as you've just heard all of these stories about Australia and
Yeah.
everything about Australia. So yeah, I don't know if I'm impressed that you haven't gotten any damage or yeah. But yeah, let's go into the Myrmecia part of this podcast. So I think we're gonna start with Novo Ants and ask how many Myrmecia colonies do you currently keep? And this is both grown colonies and just single queens.
Okay, so I've got 5 in total. I've got 3 actual colonies with workers, and then I've got another 2 single queens. So I've got Myrmecia brevinota. So that's the big colony. That's the one I haven't revealed just yet. I've got the Myrmecia piliventris, which is probably got a good 150 workers, I'd say. I've got the Myrmecia nigricincta queen with 1 worker now. That colony's struggling. And then I've got another nigricincta queen by herself with eggs. And then a Myrmecia pilisula just with eggs as well. And she's been struggling a little bit with her first worker, hatched and then died pretty much straight away. Yeah, so I've got the five colonies.
I mean, it is 5 more colonies than I have. So I must say, I would really love a colony of them, but yeah, that's it's gonna have to wait quite a long time because we're getting into the Danish winter. So yeah, I'm not sure it's too safe to ship the colonies at this time.
I did have a couple more species, but we had a bit of a heat wave come through here just over 12 months ago, and yeah, that actually killed off a few of my colonies. The queens just didn't survive the heat, and I couldn't keep them cool enough. So it's just
sad.
A bit aware of, and it was really sad to lose them.
Yeah, that's one problem we don't really have to face in Denmark. We don't really get those mega hot days, but instead we get the cold. So yeah. But Aussie ants, we already now talked a little bit about your whole ant shelf, and it's quite hard to count all your colonies. I'm guessing it's just as hard to count how many Myrmecia colonies you have, or do you have a rough estimate?
Well, and you said queens as well. So if we go off of start with Myrmecia nigricincta, I've got 5 colonies of those. The biggest one being 115 workers at the moment. Then I've got 24 queens of those, 23 queens maybe now. I've sold a couple. Myrmecia brevinota, I think I have 11 of those. The queens, a couple of them have just started getting workers. I've got Myrmecia fulvipes, Myrmecia chrysogaster, Myrmecia pilisula, Myrmecia nigriceps, Myrmecia camata, Myrmecia nigroscarpa. I've got a tarsata queen. Recently got Similima.
These names, man.
And Pyroformis as well, and I think that's all of them from memory. So I've got quite a few.
It's so weird for me to sit here because I don't know any of the species at all. You're just saying weird words right after Myrmecia.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep. Aussie ants is definitely the professional when it comes to Myrmecia.
I've had too much experience. I think just alone the Myrmecia nigricincta, I think I've caught close to 100 queens of those in total over the years. So I've got plenty of experience with those.
But we have another question over from Instagram. Again, if you want to ask these questions, go over to the Antpod on Instagram, and I'll post some stories whenever I need the questions. But we have Ant Scandinavia referring a little bit to your experience, maybe Aussie Ants, saying, have you ever been stung and how bad is it? Now, we both know that both Novo and Aussie Ants have been stung. And Novo, you've only been stung by one Myrmecia species. But Aussie Ants, what's your worst sting?
I think what I said before, to be honest, must be my worst one, where I got stung by 4 of them at the same time. One's not too bad, depends on where it gets you. If it gets you in like a really sensitive part of the hand, like right in the palm, it can be bad. And how long they sting you for as well, how much venom they inject varies. But I think I've only ever been stung by those ones. But maybe... I think actually, now that I think about it, maybe I've been stung by a Pyriformis queen a few years ago. That one hurt quite a bit because she's a lot larger. So I'm assuming she injects more venom if you're going by body size ratio. But yeah, I think they're the only 2 species I've been stung by, considering the amount of different species I've kept. But yeah, they can, like I said before, they can hurt quite a bit if they get you in a sensitive spot. But if not, they're pretty calm. I think species like Rhytidopanera, the green-headed ants, they're very well known in Queensland because of just how prevalent they are. They usually sting little kids and stuff playing in parks or whatnot. They're just in the grass and they get you, and their sting lasts a lot longer. Like it is like a pulsating sort of sting. So yeah, they're well known to be pretty bad, and they get me quite a bit. But yeah. There's a few species here that can get you.
Again, nothing at all imagine here in Denmark, which is such a safe little boring country. And referring to these safe and boring countries, and Scandinavia ask, is it like a special thing to find these queens? Because here in Denmark, I often found Lasius niger queens, and they're not really that special when you get into the hobby. Is it a special thing to find a Myrmecia queen, or is it just normal for you?
It depends on the species, to be completely honest. For me now, and I guess when I first found them, it was crazy because I personally thought that I'd never find a bull ant queen when I first started keeping ants. Like it was a very the same feeling that you have, and I guess anyone overseas, where it's a very rare sort of species. And I didn't think I had ever seen bull ants before I started keeping ants. Whether that was just I overlooked them all the time, or I'm not sure. But yeah, like when I first started and I found my first Myrmecia nigricincta queen, it was crazy. I didn't even know it was a queen at first. And I was just blown away. But then I think maybe 3 or 4 days later, then I found 37 of them in a day, and that's when I think that's when it wore off, and I was like, all right, these aren't as special anymore. But wow. Yeah, that feeling came back when I recently found my Myrmecia brevinota. I caught 12 of those recently when they flew, or back in February. It's not really recent anymore. But there were another one again where I was like, I probably will never find a queen of this species. And then I was out there and I witnessed the nuptial flight, and that was crazy. But I think the only other species would be Myrmecia gilberti, is the only other species I've ever found. So that's 3 species in total I've actually personally caught queens of. So anything else that I ever find, if I find a different species, it will be that same feeling where, you know, it's a really special, rare thing. But yeah, I buy a lot of them because there's just some that aren't in my area at all.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense that, well, the more you find, the less special it is. What about you, Novo? Have you any special stories?
Well, to be honest, I have never caught a Myrmecia queen. They've eluded me constantly, and it's a dream to be able to catch one. I believe I've walked away from one that I thought, no, that's just a worker, and I've walked away, and then later I've thought about it and thought, no, I think that was a queen. So a bit annoyed about that, because they can be a little bit difficult to tell a queen on sort of first glance if you're not knowing what you're looking for, especially if they don't have their wings, if they've already shed their wings. again, like, because I think there's like 93 species of Myrmecia in Australia, so there is a lot out there, but I don't seem to see a lot of them. Even just active colonies out and about, I haven't seen a lot of them, so they've sort of eluded me. So yeah, it's a definite dream of mine to be able to catch them. The only ones that I've ever got is ones that I've bought or ones that people have sent me before. So it's on the bucket list for sure.
So, going back to the question, you are still really hyped to find your first queens, then I can imagine.
Yes, yep. I am very excited to find my first one. A little bit intimidated too, because they're kind of scary.
Yeah, they look really scary, but that's also what I really love about them. They're so cool looking. But yeah. You are both keepers of Myrmecia, and if you were to describe how a queen look apart from a worker, how would you say it then?
I think the easiest way to tell, if you're trying to describe it to someone that has no idea, it'd be basically just a scaled up worker. So the head and just every part of their body just seems a very slight bit different. And if you don't have a worker next to it for comparison, you can just pretty easily glance over it if you don't know what you're looking for. But the only real way to tell is to look for the wing scars. And they do have the wing muscles there still, most species. Not all of them. Species like Myrmecia similima, they're almost completely ergatoid. They don't have wings anymore, or don't use their wings, sorry. They do still have the wings, they do shed them, but they don't have the muscles to be able to utilize them anymore. So some of those, they can be extremely hard to tell because you've got to get really close to them. But certain species like Myrmecia brevinota, they're very obvious because they've got that giant back on them where their wing muscles are.
Anything to add, Novo?
Yeah, no, I agree. They can be quite hard. The sort of thorax area is very segmented. But generally, I know someone else said it to me once, look for the backpack. It's like a worker who's got a backpack on. That's
exactly.
Big work the wing muscles are. But yeah, and that's I think the mistake I've made, especially early on, was overlooking them, thinking it's just a worker, but not having something to compare it to. So yeah, I totally agree with Aussie Ants.
So for all those listening out there, we have, I'm not sure how many we have from Australia, but and I'm not sure how many who know the species Myrmecia. If you were to describe the species Myrmecia to a person who didn't know how they looked, how would you say it?
I'd say if we're going off personality-wise, they're kind of similar to just I like to describe them as a dog sometimes, in the weirdest way, like an insect dog. They seem to all, even the same species, I've noticed, they differ with their personalities. So I've caught a bunch of those Myrmecia nigricincta queens from the same area, and they're all the same species, but some of them will be very aggressive, like they'll come out and they'll try and have a go at you, try and snap at you, and then other ones, they just cower in their tube, and as soon as you open their the lid of their outwall, they bolt and they run away. So it's very strange seeing ants have personalities and they're all unique. But yeah, they're sort of like dogs. They're very inquisitive. They see movement. They sort of back up and they rear their heads up and open their jaws and look at you. So yeah, they're pretty fun to interact with as well. If we're going off what they're, to describe them looks-wise, they're kind of just, they just look mean. They look angry. They're very... even just their posture, they're ready to go at you at all times, and kind of just a slim wasp. Slim wingless wasp is basically the best way to describe them, I think, with big jaws.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that too. I think that's sort of where they get their name as the bulldog ant, because they are like that. They are like a dog. You know, some of the ones I've had, as soon as you go near the nest, they'll come charging out at you and want to bite you like a dog. Other ones, yeah, will cower away. Like Aussie said, they've got those different sort of personalities for them. But yes, yeah, a slim like wasp. Those big mandibles at the front. Yeah, they're quite scary. And the thing I find with Myrmecia is just their look, and they're just watching you. and it can be quite intimidating, especially when you're first starting out, because you go near your enclosures or in your anteroom or wherever you keep them, and you'll just see them. They just stop and they look at you and they're following you around the room, and it's quite intimidating, especially when you've got to lift the lid and feed them and just hope for them.
It sounds so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. For those that don't know the Myrmecia species or gene, they have a lot better sight than I think any other ants. So they will go out and they will follow you with their eyes because, well, they can actually see you.
Right. Yeah. No, they will track you around. They'll follow you around the room, and yeah, they can see up to quite a good distance. So it's quite intimidating.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the exact distance is, but I think I've heard somewhere between 1 to 2 meters some can see, which is pretty crazy considering how small they are. And I can attest to that. A few years ago, I was down close to the New South Wales border, back on a trip where I remembered I used to see Myrmecia gullosa, which are a very pretty bright red species. And their nest down there, I've never seen ant nest that big. Their nest was, if I was going off memory, I want to say it was probably close to 70 centimeters high off the ground and 50 centimeters wide. Like, it was a big pyramid nest, and their entrances were rectangles, which was very weird to see. And every time you went near the nest, they would run out in like hordes and chase you away from the nest for ages, and I could not get close to it to take photos of it or anything because they would just not let you near it. They were very aggressive. But it's cool to see.
Yeah, it sounds really cool, and that's the big thing about them. They are really aggressive. So my next question is, what is the biggest challenge about keeping them? I'm imagining it's something with this aggression.
Yeah. There's probably a couple of things that come to mind. It is the aggression of them. I found them to be really good climbers as well. So you need to have a good, secure outworld. With something to try and keep them from climbing up the sides. The feeding, the most difficult thing I've sort of had at the moment is with the watering of them, keeping the water up to them. I have some water feeders in their outworld, but they continually want to get inside the water feeder. So I might have to try and block it off somehow, but they want to get in there and I've got to change the water out and I just don't want them near me. So it's a waiting game. I have to wait. I'll shake them out. But also the food too, I've found can be a little bit difficult, just getting the food right for them. They can be a little bit fussy with the protein, keeping the protein up to them. So I found that a little bit challenging as well, though.
Do you want to say more about or can you explain a little bit more about the food problem?
Yeah, with the food, so generally, I will generally give them crickets, and a lot of them having, you sort of have to live feed Myrmecia. They hunt, they're solitary, so they'll go out and they'll hunt by themselves. So if it's not moving, if it's not live, they generally won't touch it. They'll ignore it. So you have to live feed them, and they'll chase that down. They'll grab it with the mandibles. They'll give it a sting, paralyze it, and then drag it back to the nest. But trying to get it right, trying to get the right size of crickets to give them. Also with mealworms, I try and give them mealworms, but then I find I have to cut them up, and the movement, they sort of ignore them. So just occasionally they'll drag them back into, but then it's different species as well. The Brevinoda seem to ignore the mealworms that I give them, but the Piliventris, they love mealworms, probably more so than the crickets, which was quite surprising to me. And even if they're cut up and they're not moving, they'll grab them and drag them back in. So, yeah, I've just found it a little bit tricky just to sort out their food, whereas the other species that I keep, it doesn't matter what I do. I just give them anything and they'll eat it.
Do you have anything to add on that, Aussie? Is it the same struggles you found, or?
Yeah, I have something to add about them being picky. Yeah, I've noticed it's a lot to do with species sometimes as well. Like, personally, at least, Myrmecia nigricincta, my main colonies, they're pretty easy to going. Like, they'll eat anything you put in there. You chuck anything in there, live or dead, they'll take it. But the most difficult one that I've got at the moment is my Myrmecia chrysogaster. They will not eat anything live, They will not hunt. They will barely leave their nest. I have to kill the cricket, and it has to be a very specific size, like probably the same size as maybe a full-grown larvae of theirs. I have to kill it. I have to put it right at the entrance of their nest, or even inside the not the test tube, sorry, the entrance tube inside it, and that's when they'll take it. And they also, I've noticed, they go through phases. So when I first had the queen, she was raising her first generations, she would take crickets. Then they had a phase where they didn't want crickets anymore, and they only wanted small cockroaches. And then they've gone back out of that again, and then they wanted live crickets for a while, and then they stopped accepting live crickets again, and now they're completely back on small dead crickets in their tube. So yeah, it seems like depending on the species, they can be very different as well. And I don't know if that has something to do with sort of they've got like a natural prey that they hunt that we don't really know about, because most species are very understudied. There might be like ones that are specifically specialized to hunt spiders or something, which would be pretty interesting to learn about. But like I said, it's not very well known, a lot of the species. Because I've seen, I think, Myrmecia gilberti, which are a small gold species. They look like pillaventris. In the wild, I've only really ever seen them carrying wild bush roaches. They always carry them around, so I don't know if they're a specialist hunter of that, or if it's just coincidence that they're very common in the area and that's what they hunt. But it'd be interesting to learn stuff like that. But yeah, that's the main thing, is food, very specific, different needs that each one wants. And depending on the stage of brood and the amount of brood that they have, they will accept different size and quantities of insects. It's a lot of learning what they want and when they want it. Yeah.
So you wouldn't say their aggression is a challenge?
For new ant keepers, I'd say it can be, but I've sort of gotten used to it. I know somewhat when to not come near them. I just wait till there's a very minimal amount of them in their outworld, and that's when I go in there and clean or feed them or whatnot. But when there's a lot of them out, I don't go near it. Especially with my I've got a couple setups with fish tanks, and the silicon corners where they glue the fish tank pieces, the glass panes together. They can cross that silicon even with a fluon barrier. So yeah, I've got to not go into that when they're all out and about, because they'll be all over the lid and I won't be able to close it without getting stung. So it can be, and I think depending on the colony size as well, if it's a massive colony, it's obviously, I guess that's a generic thing with every species, but the bigger the colony gets, the harder it is to look after them by, making sure they don't get out primarily. I had that issue with the colony recently and had to completely swap their whole setup because they were just escaping. Everyone was finding them all over the house.
That doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
It's you really have to respect them. That's what I'm hearing. You have to.
Yep. Yeah. It's keeping an eye on them, understanding them. They're all a little bit different too. The different colonies, even if they're the same species, sometimes the colonies behave a little bit differently to each other. So you sort of go, okay, these guys, this time of day, they're quiet. I'll go and feed them. That's what I've found, especially with the Brevinoda ones. There's certain times of day where there's none in the outworld at all. So I'll quickly dash in and do some clean up and feed them again and get out of there as quick as I can.
So you both have I don't know, I wouldn't say large colonies, but again, 150 workers are quite large. I started to read a little bit up on the species before this interview, and just to get a knowledge of them. And most of the bigger species take around half a year for an egg to turn into a worker. How long does it take to grow a large species? Of course, depending on the size.
It depends a lot on the temperature. So if it's cold, obviously brood development's a lot slower. I think I've got it written down somewhere, but my Brevinoda, I've caught them in February. I think it was late February. I'm pretty sure the 22nd of February this year. And they only recently just got their workers, like probably a week ago. They started getting their first workers. So it was about, what's that? We're in the 9th month now. So about 6 or 7 months for workers. But as the weather warms up, it can speed up their brood development quite a lot. And then smaller species, they can go in maybe 2 to 3 months. So yeah, it's mainly based on temperature and size of the worker.
Yeah, and that just makes it that more impressive that you, Novo, you were out with, can't remember the exact name of the team, but you were out cleaning out or moving some Myrmecia nest in a YouTube video a while back. And it's just impressive to see how large the colonies are compared to how slow they grow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were Brevinota, so quite a large species. And the one that we had to remove that was being destroyed, that was probably 2,000 to 3,000 workers in that colony. So yeah, very big size. So it would have taken quite a long time to get to that sort of quantity of workers, and a lot of brood in that as well.
Yeah, it's pure insanity.
Personally, I find that within the first year, the growth is normally the slowest, and I think this is also, like I said, something with all species. Obviously, on a different scale, small species, they might get 200 to 300 workers in their first year, whereas if you're really lucky, like one of my colonies, in 10 months it's gotten 114 workers, one of my bull ant colonies, but that's like incredibly fast. And they're also the smaller species, Myrmecia nigricincta, so they can grow quite quick. But then the second year, I've noticed, tends to be where the actual population growth ramps up quite significantly. So you struggle through the first year and you get the colony somewhat established. Then the second year they explode, and then by the third year they normally are a somewhat established, fully grown colony if all goes well. But depending on obviously the queen that you're raising, you can have, I think I'm pretty sure my smallest colony that I'm keeping at the moment was actually caught before my biggest one, but just the different queens, they just got more workers from the first generation. The second generation, they grew much faster for no obvious reason. So that's why it's good to catch them in bulk sometimes as well, and you get to pick the best one. Get a big colony much quicker.
Yeah, but you never know if you have a surviving queen or if you have a machine queen, or what you will get. But now we've talked a little bit about the biggest challenge about keeping Myrmecia. But what makes you keep Myrmecia? Let's start with Novo. Why do you want to keep such an aggressive species?
Oh, just they're awesome. They just look amazing. I do prefer the larger species of ants, so I can really get a good look at what they're doing, and a good look at the species. But I think with the bull ants, they've got such a big reputation, especially in Australia. Obviously, they're well known. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around them as well. So I wanted to keep them, to understand them a little bit better, to find out what makes them different. I think because they've got a few traits that are different to other species or other genus of ants as well. The solitary hunting and things like that you don't really see in a lot of other genus. So I really wanted to explore that a little bit more and understand them properly, because my first experience or first knowledge of them is they're just scary ants, keep away from them. But I wanted to see a bit more about them, actually understand them properly. So yeah, that's a big reason why I wanted to keep them.
And Aussie, what's your biggest reason for wanting to keep them? Or what's your reason to wanting to keep them?
Same thing as Novo said, really. They're just a very interesting species, and there's such a massive variety of them. Like Novo said earlier, there's about 93 species. That's just the ones that we know of. There's probably more species that haven't even been discovered yet. And the vast majority of them probably haven't even been kept by any ant keepers yet. Only a small minority are common species that are frequently sold on the market around in Australia. But they're just massive is the first thing. So they're just awesome to watch, awesome to look at. They're very rewarding to grow because it is such a process. When it takes months and months and months just to get your first workers, when you get those first workers, it's way more exciting than something that you could get in 1 to 2 months, because it's just the amount of time that you've waited for it. And yeah, their personalities.
You get a special connection.
Yeah, exactly. With each queen. But yeah, their personalities as well. Like, they're not like the everyday ant. When you just tell an everyday person that doesn't keep ants, when they think of an ant, it's just, a normal black ant that runs around and, the small thing, it's only a few millimeters. But yeah, they're just so different and have such a vibrant personality that differs between each queen. Whereas your generic things, they're sort of just mindless. They eat food and then they run back into their nest, But yeah, they interact with you in a way that normal ants don't, just because they can actually see you and they follow you around and they try and bite you and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that point about it's such an event when you get your first workers with the Myrmecia colony, because it is challenging. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort to get them to that stage. So the journey is exciting that goes along with them, whereas some of the other genus or other species of ants out there, that sometimes you don't have to do too much. You just got to play the waiting game, and over a few months you'll see them. But yeah, with Myrmecia, you just got to get them to that stage, and it's a challenge, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, and it just gives you that much more of a reward if it all succeeds.
Exactly. Yep. More like a pet that you're actually interacting with and caring for, rather than just something that you watch develop,
Yeah. Yep, totally.
Okay. Well, 2 answers that I think answers the question perfectly. Now going on to the final part of the podcast, which is a dedicated audience questions. But before we go into that, I want to give a little shout out to our YouTube family member, Medical Carcase, who is actually with us on the podcast and just sitting and listening. So if you want to hear the live podcast, you can join the YouTube family member team over on YouTube. But yeah, going on to the final part of the podcast, we have questions from Instagram asked on the Ant Pod. And the first question is from Ants Island, who asked, can Myrmecia kill you?
Yes, it's a lot like, a wasp sting, though. You have to be very allergic to them. And there's not many cases of people dying, but there are a few. I think the 2 that I've heard of are Pyriformis and Pilistula. They both have killed people in the past. But yeah, it's not something that you should be worried about. It's only in very severe cases where you're highly allergic to it.
Yeah,
I guess it's much the same as a bee sting. It won't harm unless you're allergic.
Yeah. I have heard, and I don't know how true it necessarily is, but if you're stung by multiple bull ants, even if you're not necessarily allergic to it, the toxin can build up. But I think you had to be stung by about 1,000, so you'd have to fall on a big nest of them and not be moving too quick.
Yeah.
But I think it's really that anaphylactic shock that's the main killer of them. And the ones I've heard of is the Myrmecia pilistula, which are a very aggressive species.
It doesn't sound fun being stung by thousands of Myrmecia, especially not after our little talk about how aggressive they are. So the next 2 questions sounds to me quite weird, but it may just be my knowledge lacking a little bit in the Myrmecia topic. But we have Lowly asking, can all workers lay eggs? And we also have the Urban Antkeeper asking, do all Myrmecia lay fertile protein eggs to eat? And why do they do that? Is that something you know anything about? Because personally, I don't know anything about it.
Novo, do you know anything about that? Do you want to have a crack at it, or do you want me to go?
Well, yeah, you probably know more than me. I only know a little bit of limited knowledge on that. I do know the queens will lay eggs to feed to their larvae. So obviously, if she's not able to go out and hunt or find protein, she can at least feed those eggs to her larvae to help them to develop. I know in certain species, I think they can have what they call sort of like gamergates or ergotoid queens. Well, I think it's gammergate, I'm pretty sure, where a worker will become fertile and lay those eggs. But yeah, I haven't done a lot of research into that area to find out much more.
Yeah, I haven't done any research either. It's more just what I've sort of learnt over the time. So I'm not an expert and don't take anything I say with 100% certainty. But yeah, I have workers, at least as far as I know, all workers can lay eggs. I'm not sure about all species of Myrmecia, but yeah, they are infertile eggs and are never kept within the nest, to my knowledge. They're always the same thing where it's protein eggs. They seem to be more gelatinous. I watched a worker yesterday lay an egg, and as she grabbed it, it was very, yeah, like gelatinous, I guess is the best word to describe it. Very squishy, and they are immediately fed to the larvae, and the larvae know that those eggs are coming. So there must be a lot of pheromones going on that we can't have any idea of, can't see or smell them. Because yeah, as soon as one of the workers or the queen's laying one of these protein eggs, I've noticed all the larvae, they're like little baby birds. They all stand up with their heads and they're all like sniffing around for food, waiting for it. And whoever laid the egg will pick one of the larvae and put it right in their mouth and then let go, and you watch the little larvae eat the egg. It's pretty interesting. And I guess it's just a little quick protein packet. It's just a little boost of protein, especially in times where I guess they can't find any food. The workers might have that protein from their last meal when they've found a cricket, licked up some of the juices out of the dead cricket, and they can turn that into little protein packets to feed the larvae. It's probably very nutritious for them, very helps them grow quite a lot, but not sure why they do it other than just to feed the larvae, I guess. Yeah, but it is interesting to watch, but I don't know, haven't done any research or know any reason or anything about it, but yeah.
It's really cool hearing all of this, and I'm immediately starting to think rather all ants do this or all gamma gate systems do this, and we're just not able to really see it, whereas Myrmecia are just so large that you can really see it. Either way, it's really cool. It's really cool to think about it, because it's just when I got the questions, I just thought it didn't mean anything to me, but yeah, there's a meaning behind the questions, which is always good. So the next question comes from Spam Ant, and they ask, what is the best Myrmecia beginner species?
I would probably say none of them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call Myrmecia a beginner species.
Okay, well I'm going to rewrite the question. What's the best entry species within Myrmecia?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't kept a lot of the different species, but from the ones I have kept, I think Nigra cincta, they seem to have a nice personality, and seem a little bit more active and easygoing as far as feeding and just producing eggs and larvae. They just seem a little bit probably easier to handle.
Yeah, I'd say the same. They're I've noticed a lot of people struggle with failed pupations. A lot of the larvae, they can very easily grow them. They accept all the food. I don't think I've ever had that species, Myrmecia nigra to ever eat eggs out of stress or anything. They're pretty good at keeping their brood, but their main issue is, failed pupations, where the larvae, they'll get to the point where they begin to spin a cocoon, and they end up just failing to do it. And what happens is the larvae then becomes the pupa, which is, as you've seen in every other species, it doesn't have a cocoon protecting it. It's just a naked white shell that looks exactly like the ant, but it's all tucked up. And they're very fragile for such a big species to be carrying around with their sharp mandibles. They always get sliced up or damaged in some way. So if they don't have that cocoon, they pretty much are always dead unless you separate them and raise them separately. But yeah, the best beginner species would have to probably be Myrmecia nigra if you know how to raise them. My best tip on that would be get the substrate right. Because the reason why bull ants fail to pupate is they need anchor points. So the larvae need to be able to anchor their silk to certain particles around them. Otherwise, they won't be able to make the scaffold to then continue weaving their cocoon. I don't know why it's different for them, because there's plenty of species that spin cocoons that do not need the scaffold. Like Camponotus, I've never had issues with them spinning cocoons. They do it flawlessly with no substrate. But bull ants, they do need to anchor their silk to things. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but koya, it's like a coconut husk stuff that's normally used in gardening, and you mix it into soil and stuff. If you buy a block of that dry, crush it up, sprinkle it around the entrance of their nest or the tube, it works wonders for species that struggle with pupating, because sand tends to be too fine of a particle to attach to sometimes. But again, even just within bull ants, certain species are much better at it than others. No idea why some of them struggle to spin cocoons and some of them don't, but yeah, definitely if you're going to get a beginner species, something smaller, the big ones for beginners might just take far too long to develop, and it's too much care to be put into it at that stage. But so yeah, something like Myrmecia nodicincta, where they're a small, fast-growing species. If you know how to do it, you get the proper information, proper substrate, proper setup, they're the best. But like Novo said, there's not really any that's a beginner. They're all pretty similar. They're all pretty difficult unless you know what you're doing. But yeah, that would be the best beginner within Myrmecia.
It's things like this I really love, because last episode, of course, this is a little bit pre-recorded, so you haven't heard the last episode where we said it all leaf cutters. It's amazing that even after keeping ants for so many years, you can just enter a whole new part of ant keeping where you have to just change your mindset. Now you have to focus on live feeding and seeing if they take it and do their spin the cocoons and everything. I just find it's amazing that we have such a large hobby and so many different species. The next question comes from Ants to Go, who asked, how much does a Myrmecia queen cost in Australia? Because over here in Europe, they are really expensive.
Yeah, it varies quite a lot. Like you can get, I think the cheapest I've seen recently is probably $80 for some of the smaller species, but they can go up to probably around $300. But yeah, on average, I think somewhere between $100 and $200 is like the average cost I've seen recently. But it varies depending on obviously what type it is and how common they were that season, and I guess the competitive market, how much other people are selling them for, and obviously colony size. If you're going for one with workers, they always bump up the price a bit just because obvious reasons, had to put some care into them. But yeah, probably somewhere between 100 to 200. I don't know if you've seen any different, Novo.
Yeah, no, that's about the same. Yeah, the cheapest I've bought one for, I think, was $80. Quite a couple of years ago. But yeah, generally, 100, 150 is generally what you'll get most of them, and that's just the sort of the common sort of species that you have. The ones that are a little bit rarer, they'll definitely be up into the 200s, maybe even up into $300 for them. Yeah, it does vary quite a lot, and depending on who you talk to as well, sometimes you can hunt around a bit, or you might be able to get one off somebody you know a little bit better, and they might give you a bit of a discount.
But what I'm hearing is it's still really expensive over there, just as it is in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But I mean, they are quite a special species, and well, they have quite a lot of care to grow them. And finally, we have a question from Durka, the host of Formicast, who asked a question to me. And he asked rather I would like to keep Myrmecia myself. And well, I would really love to keep Myrmecia as myself. Like I also said a bit earlier in the podcast, my dream species has for the longest time been leafcutters together with kind of this dream of Myrmecia. But it's just, it's hard for me to, get them from Australia because, it's quite a long trip, and I'm scared that they will die doing the trip. Saying that, I actually recently saw a few people from Russia unboxing some Myrmecia queens that lived in the same climate as me, and they arrived just fine, so yeah. But I must say, we are getting close to the end of the podcast, and I will say it's been amazing having both of you here on the podcast, with a third listener being Medical Car Case. Any final words you want to say, starting with Novo?
Yeah, no, I'd like to, thank you very much for being on the podcast. Really enjoyed it, and thanks to Aussie Ants as well. Great to spend some time with both of you. It's a fantastic species, ant keeping. I'd recommend it to anyone. It's really fascinating what you can learn from them. And it's a very rewarding hobby to have as well. So I really do encourage everybody to do that. And if you're going to get into Myrmecia, do some research and ask lots of questions.
I think that's a brilliant final answer. And Aussie Ants?
Yeah, same thing. Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you guys about it. I've liked to talk about these sorts of things. I've got plenty of experience raising them. Always like to share it around, help people with raising them, sort of thing. But yeah, it was good to be on. That's about it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be too complicated. Now, I don't know if you've heard the episode, again, this is a little bit pre-recorded, so I don't know if you've heard episode 3, the new ending style to these podcasts. Have you heard it? Any of you?
No, I haven't.
I haven't.
No, it's a static ants. He made this brilliant way of ending the podcast in Ant Oliver style. The bye. That's how I end all my videos.
Ah, yes. Yep.
Yeah. So, are you in on joining Ant Oliver style and ending the podcast with bye?
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I'll give it a go,
Okay.
but my voice might not go there.
No, it's that's the fun part of it all. So I'm gonna start with Novo and then Aussie, and then I'm gonna end it out myself. So, are we ready?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, Novo ants,
Bye.
Aussie ants,
Bye.
and Ant Oliver. Bye.